everybody. Welcome to Connect Worship. We're going to do something a little different tonight. We have been walking through our series called Unshakable Hope, and last week Brady referenced what it could look like for you to use your gifting and to serve. And so what we wanted to do was to kind of take a step into that. And so I want to explain a little bit about what it looks like for us to think through how has God made me and what does it look like for me to serve using those gifts and literally the way the Lord has made me. It's helpful for us to remember that we have been uniquely wired as well as uniquely gifted and uniquely placed. And so what I want to do is to walk through those things and then give some practical application for what that means for each of us. So what does it mean for us to be uniquely wired? In Psalms 139, 13 through 16, it says, "For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. For my frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them." In verse 15, we see that he is talking about our physical frame. It's our physical makeup. So God put us together thinking about the days that he was putting before us. In verse 16, when he references this unformed substance, think about that as our personality, the way that we are, the way we relate to one another. Are we an introvert? Are we an extrovert? Just who we are. In verse 16 also says that he knows all the days before us. God gave you a unique personality, and he had purposes planned with you in mind as he created you. So this is what it means that each one of us is uniquely wired. But we're also uniquely gifted. Romans 12, 6 through 8 says this, "Having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let us use them. If prophecy, in proportion to our faith. If service, in our serving. The one who teaches, in his teaching. The one who exhorts, in his exhortation. The one who contributes, in generosity. The one who leads, with zeal. The one who does acts of mercy, with cheerfulness." So verse 6 says differences are given to us, and that is a display of grace. And I love to think about it like this. The things that we are good at and love to do have been specifically given to us. So the things that bring us joy, the things that make our eyes light up, and the things we love to talk about, God has uniquely gifted those things to us. I work with UNC athletes, specifically the women's basketball team. And one of the things I tell them often is not everybody can do what you can do. God has uniquely gifted you with this ability to be a Division I basketball player for a reason. Now, what are you going to do to leverage that gift so that you can serve him? And then next, we have been uniquely placed. In Acts 17, verses 24 through 28, it says this, "The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God, and perhaps feel their way towards him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each of us." God has determined our allotted time as well as the boundaries of our dwelling places. God determined our job. He determined our neighborhood. And he says he did so that men might find them and know that God is not far from them. So where you are, being here at UNT is not an accident. There's a purpose for that. There's a reason that you're here in Denton at UNT besides just getting a degree. You have unique opportunities. And when we think about that, we have to remember no one else is where you are. So no one else has those same circumstances. And so what do we do with that? How do we think about our unique opportunities? I just want to give you a couple helpful hints. The first is show hospitality to all. Benevolence done to those outside of our normal circle of friends, as well as those who believe different than us. You see, we extend hospitality. We reach out and get to know people that are different than us because God has extended hospitality to us. And so what does this look like? It means that we greet those that we meet. We engage people. We ask open-ended questions because we want to get to have a conversation. And we remember that people are hungry to be known. I think especially right now, with all that is happening within this pandemic, people are lonely. They're stuck in their dorm rooms or their apartments. They long to be known. And so what would it look like for you to engage into those spaces? I think another thing that's really helpful, that's harder to do right now, but is to make dinner and meals a priority. Invite the people around you into your life to share the table with you. There's something that happens whenever you get to sit down and share a meal with someone. For some reason, walls seem to come down and conversation tends to happen easier. And so, as it becomes safer, invite people in to share that space with you. Another thing that is really, really helpful is we have to pay attention to those who are the outliers. So maybe in class, in your organizations, when you come to the BSM and you're in your Connect group, at your job, who are the people that are just struggling to get connected? Who are the people that just seem that when everyone else is over here, they're over there? What would it look like for you to engage them? What would it look like for you to say, I'm going to step out of my way to go and invest in a relationship with them? So we, as I've said, we are uniquely wired, uniquely gifted, and uniquely placed. One of the things that I often have conversations about is, what is God calling me to do? Or how do I know what my spiritual giftings are? What is it I'm supposed to do with my life? How am I supposed to choose these things? And I enjoy getting to have those conversations with students because I think it helps us start to unravel who God has created us to be and to recognize that the future could look very different than we ever imagined. So how do we figure out what we're called to do? I just have a couple questions that I want you to think about, and I want you to talk about these in your Connect groups. So first, what do you love? What are the things that you just love, that you're drawn to? Second, what makes you cry? Our tears are the best indicators of what really matters to our heart. Where do you live? This is one of the cards in your hands. Literally, this is something that you get to figure out how you play that card, how you respond. So who do you live around? What's your neighborhood? These are part of God's calling in your life. What are you really good at? What are you really terrible at? I often use this example. My mom and my brother were really good at art. And then I have a brother who's really good at opera singing. I'm a musician, but I can't sing opera. And I can enjoy art, but I am not an artist. And so if I wanted to spend my life pursuing those two passions and careers, I would be wasting the gifting that God has given me. And ultimately, I'm going to be really, really frustrated because that just doesn't come as naturally to me as it does to them. Just as there are things that God has given me that do not come natural to them. And lastly, where do you have your opportunities? Where do you have expertise? And where do you have resources, your education? What does that look like? What would it look like for you to serve within those things? Calvin's Institutes, there's this quote. It says, the knowledge of God and that of ourself are connected. Without knowledge of self, there is no knowledge of God. And without knowledge of God, there is no knowledge of self. When we understand who God is and that He has a purpose in creating us, it begins to create a different identity, a different understanding of who we are. And so the better we know the Lord, the better we're able to understand who we are and his purpose in our lives. I was listening to a podcast a couple years ago by Bridgetown Church. The pastor is John Mark Comer. And he shares 7 stages of discovery, of identity and calling. And I just want to walk you through those because I think it's another thing that's really helpful for us. So first, this first stage is sacred foundations. So those are our first beginnings of our identity and the call of God puts on our life. So think about it like this: your family, your socioeconomic status that you grew up in, your gender, your Myers-Briggs type, the year you were born, the culture you were born into. You have little to no control of these things, but they are going to impact you. Just as I said, God had a unique plan in place for where you would be. And so how is he using those things to help shape you for your future? And then next is discovery. This can be messy and long and awkward, but it's a stage that all of us walk through. You see, this is where we have a season of learning and unlearning who we are and who we are not. It's going to be filled with successes and failures, and we have to look at those as gifts because they're helping us better understand, once again, who we are, how we're wired, and how we're gifted. It's during this season that we begin to learn what we're called to and what we're not called to. And once we get a better picture of what we're being called to, that next step is step out and go for it. You're discovering, step out, do something. And so as you're figuring out who I am, how can God use my personality? How can he use my gifts? Where I'm placed? Just step out and do something. Next, getting good. This is one that I've actually had some people push back on before. It takes around 10,000 hours to get really good at anything. And so I think when we start to realize, okay, we can be gifted or good at something, but to get really good, it takes time and intentional effort. One of the things that I've appreciated most of working with the women's basketball team here at UNT is the amount of time that I see them invest in their sport. These are some of the best athletes in the state of Texas, but they're still showing up early to practice their shot. They're still showing up to work on fundamentals. They're showing up to lift weights and to build muscle. They're watching film. They're spending all of this time because they don't only want to be good, but they want to be great. And so if there's something that God is calling us to, shouldn't we want to do the same thing? And so as a musician, it takes time to build the memory to play the guitar. It takes time to work on our voices and to get them prepared to be able to be the best that they can be. As a teacher, someone who gets to stand here right now in front of a camera, when usually it's in front of you, that takes time. You don't just learn how to do that. It might be a gift, but to be able to understand how do I best communicate and present information so that it can not only be learned, but also applied to someone's life. It takes time. Are we willing to invest that? Are we willing to be disciplined enough to say, God has gifted me with this, and I want to utilize it to the best of my ability for the glory of the Lord? Next 3 don't really apply to where you are right now, so I'm just going to mention them briefly. So it's the wall. This is when a crisis, it's also called a dark night of the soul, occurs. It's where your identity and calling is tested. And in that moment, it begins to be refined. I've had moments of those. I knew when I was in high school that God was calling me to ministry. It became clearer when I was in college what that was going to look like. What I thought it was going to be, it didn't turn out to be that. And then after college, while I was in seminary, I was serving on staff at a church. And during that moment, God started to really kind of shift and say, I'm leading you to campus college ministry. And after 3 years on this campus, we had some situations that occurred where I wrestled with, is this where I'm supposed to be? And is ministry what I'm supposed to do? And it was during that time, in those times, when I really had to run after the Lord to say, what is it that you're trying to teach me right here? And these moments, these walls, usually are going to happen more than once. And if you hang in there, and if you continue to seek the Lord through the wall, you're going to come out changed. And you're going to be humbled, and there's going to be a new inner freedom, a new joy, and a new contentment that is going to be based on your confidence in who God is and who He created you to be. This next, number 6 stage is staying faithful and fruitful. This stage can be the best years of your life when you're getting literally to just invest well. You get to see the fruits that you are bearing and the things that the Lord is blessing. You see, God desires that we bear much fruit. And without faithfulness, there's fruitfulness. And so when we really, as we're getting older, we recognize this is what God has called me to do. How am I using it? How am I being faithful? How am I allowing Him to produce fruit? And then lastly, ending well. One of the things that I've noticed and I've learned in my 40 years is that so many people may start off well, but they end in disaster. We look back at the life of King Saul in the Bible. He started off well, but his life ended in disaster. In fact, 30% of the people in the Bible end well. That means 70% in the Bible do not. What would it look like for us to end well? I think about the end of my life. My parents are of retirement age, and as I talk to my dad about retiring and when he should do that, it makes me think about what happens when I'm his age. I don't want to step away from ministry. I might not be doing it as a vocation, but I want that to always be a part of my life. I want to always be wanting to share the gospel. I want to always look to see how can I leverage my gifts based on my ability at that time. I want to end well. And so I want to show you just kind of a process of how, when I have this conversation with students, what it looks like for us to go through and to think through, how do I end, or how do I learn who I am, so that I can not only serve, but as I start to think about what does my life look like? What is the trajectory that I'm going to take? How can I pursue the Lord? Thinking through specifically my unique wiring, my unique gifting, and my unique opportunities. And as we do that, I also want you to think through, how could you use those things in the BSM to serve? We're getting to the point now where you can apply to be a BSM student leader. Our student leaders help us do ministry. It looks different right now during COVID, but as you see those students that are on this camera leading worship, they're part of our band and our AV team. And we have different ministry teams that are happening. And so in the upcoming weeks, we're going to continue to let you know, here's how you can sign up to be a BSM student leader. We want to help you not only grow in your relationship with the Lord. Our BSM mission statement is, we know God to make Him known. We want to help you grow in your relationship and understand the gospel and its implications for your life, so that you feel the passion and the calling to go and to share that gospel with other people. We want to help you make an impact on our campus, because no one else can have the same impact that you have, because no one else has that same combination of wiring, gifting, and opportunity. So as we move into this next section, my hope is, as I said, just to give you a quick glimpse into what does it look like for us to practically think through and process what it is that God is calling us to do. Okay, as we briefly discussed, we know some really helpful things. First off, we know that God has uniquely wired us. We know that He has uniquely gifted us and uniquely placed us. And so what I want to do is to help you kind of think through, what does that mean? So when I sit down with the student and they're asking me specifically, like, what is it that I'm supposed to do? I walk them through this. And so I just want to kind of share a couple things with you from my perspective. So my wiring, I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram, but I am a 1-wing 9. So what that means is that I am definitely what someone would call a perfectionist. And what that means is that I'm a reformer. I'm always looking to figure out how can we do something better. But that wing 9 that I have means that I also tend to be more reserved. I tend to want to help Other people figure things out. I tend to let them speak into what we're doing. Another aspect would be I am more introverted. So, and what this means is that I'm good. I'm best when I'm in one-on-one settings, or there's just a small group of us that are getting to spend some time together. When it comes to how I'm gifted, I would say that I'm really gifted at organization. I'm good at strategy. I'm gifted in music. And so as I started to kind of think through those different aspects of how I'm gifted, I'm academically. So how do I start to use those things? And then I start to ask, okay, where am I? So first off, obviously, I am in Denton, specifically at UNT-BSM. I'm also a PhD student. So when I think through those type of things, it's trying to figure out, okay, what does this mean for me and my life? I want you to know I'm not that great of an artist, but I'm going to try here. So we have on a playground. So imagine that this is our playground. And over here, we have the swings, okay? And then over here, we have the slide. Okay, and then over here, we have the monkey bars. So when I'm talking with students, what I want them to understand is, first off, God, as long as we're on the playground, as long as we are within this boundary, we can be within God's calling for our life. It's when we get out here in the weeds that we're not faithfully looking to see, God, what is it that you are calling me to do? What does it look like for me to say, okay, how am I wired? How am I gifted? And where am I placed? And so, as I said earlier, this would be if I was starting to pursue opera, or art. That would have me in the weeds. But based on my gifting and how I'm wired, I have some opportunities and some things to think through. So first, I thought growing up that I was going to be a teacher and a coach. And I thought that because I played sports, I enjoyed school. And so it just seemed like the natural progression. But it was as I was getting closer to college that I started to question, is this what I'm supposed to do? Next, while I was in college, I worked as an artist manager for artists. And so what that means is that I was in Nashville, and so I was working within the music business. So I'm just going to say music business. But then God started to move and to reveal some other things to me. And that came down more to vocational ministry. And so here is what's important. These were 3 different callings that I felt God had placed on my life. This was 1, and of course 2 and 3. And so I was trying to figure out, what does that mean for me? And so then what I'm doing is I'm looking at, okay, based on my wiring, based on my giftedness, and based on my where I'm placed, what would it look like for me to take advantage of the opportunities he's going to give me? And so as I was praying through that, what was originally here during high school, and then this led to college. And I thought that I was going to be in the music ministry or the music business for the rest of my life. But then God started to lead me right here into a ministry calling. But here's what I want you to understand. Could I have served the Lord faithfully in any one of these options? Absolutely. Could God have used me in those options? Yes. And here's the other thing. I'm in ministry right now, but you know what? God could move me here later on in life. And that doesn't mean that I misread the calling that he had placed on my life. What that means is that God is just moving and placing me in a different opportunity. And so my hope is that you would start to think through these things. Number one, what's on your playground? Number two, who can help you process through where God is calling you? Oh, sorry again. And as you think through those things, you need to remember and go back up to, how am I wired? How am I gifted? Where have I been placed? Or where could I be placed in the future? And so my hope is, as you're going into your Connect group time, that as you walk through those questions that I mentioned, that you'll begin to think through specifically, how am I wired? How am I gifted? And where am I placed? What's on my playground? Who is someone that can help me process through this? Come and join a BSM staff member and just say, hey, can we talk about this? Reach out to me. I would love to have this conversation with you. Who are those people that know me best that can help me figure out these things? And so I hope that your conversation during your Connect group is helpful and beneficial. And so let's pray together before your conversation. Father, we're thankful that you love us so much, that you uniquely wired us, that you created our personalities, God, that you uniquely gifted us. You gave us things that we would love for specific reasons that you have uniquely placed us. As you thought ahead to all of our days, you knew who we were going to be. And so, Father, I pray that as these students begin to think through these things, God, that you'd provide clarity and that you would help them better understand who it is that you have made them to be and how they can best serve you from their personalities, from their gifting and the opportunities that you have placed before them. In Jesus' name, amen.